national seminar which is being sponsored by ICSSR on creating inclusive and sustainable urban spaces, urbanization and urban planning in India, with special reference to Kashmir, is of course very timely and need of the hour. And I'm sure, after seeing the type of, deliberations that are going to be held in these 2 days, will be immensely of great importance and great learning for all the participants who will take part in it. It was a great pleasure to listen to Mr. Athar Amir while he was explaining about the smart city. I'm sure many of us must have had some or the other type of confusion, what is happening where. That is clear. And of course, about our foreshore road, I was wondering myself, this road was okay, what is happening? So now perhaps it's clear to me what's happening, and I think very well thought of and very well planned. That was needed. I think it's the eye of the planner and eye of the engineer which has seen that, and you have come up with that. Definitely, the measures which are being taken up in our Srinagar city were needed very badly, due to, of course, as someone said, due to the migration from rural to urban areas. Of course, that affects the working, or that affects the environment of the urban. And some of the main hassles which we have when huge population migrates to urbanization is, of course, your environmental challenges and issues, very important, your health issues, then the urban growing population which we have, and to me the most important one is the traffic hustle and bustle which we have to control, which of course Mr. Amir gave some road mapping pertaining to that. And of course the crime, increase of crime which we see is on rise in our own UT also, and the other social issues like drug abuse, violence and other factors which are also to be controlled. Besides the housing planning and other parameters which are to be taken into account. I'm sure that this present seminar for 2 days will definitely, I was seeing the topics which are to be covered, very important topics which are to be covered, but I will request the organizers that our students, our research scholars, our youth should take active participation in this 2-day seminars, because they are the ambassadors, like Mr. Athar was saying, about the social media commenting and all that. I would definitely like that our youth has a positive, thinking also, positive thinking to see the changes which are taking place and try to involve themselves, because they are the ambassadors of this place, and they have the future in everything, whether it's planning, whether it's as academicians, whether it's as researchers, whether it's as policy makers. So they have to think positively and contribute not only to the planning, contribute even to the society, and contribute in every way, whether it's social evils, whether it's planning, whether it's environmental issues, whether it's any other issue, so that we make a change in our society. And not only we have a Srinagar smart city, but we have smartness in everything, smartness amongst our youth, smartness in our planning, and it becomes a role model not only for rest of the parts of a country, but internationally it becomes a role model. Our city becomes a role model for others to follow. Just to, personal observation, when I look back to say 30 to 40 years back pertaining to our, Srinagar, the serenity and pristinity that this Srinagar city had, I think it has no match. I can still visualize, although टांगा चलते थे, टांगे ही चलते थे, लेकिन उन टांगों, वो जो टांगा चलते थे उनकी एक जो ग्रेस थी, या एक मैं कहूँगी एक प्रेस्टिनिटी थी, या एक जो एक ऑरा होता था, दैट वाज रियली सो गुड. इंसान इतना एंजॉय करता था. आई ऑलवेज यूज टू सिट ऑन अ टांगा एंड देन गो टू माई कॉलेज फ्रॉम बरजला टू वुमेन्स कॉलेज, एंड रियली वी यूज टू एंजॉय जस्ट 10 to 15 minutes. फिर बीच में चल के जाते थे. सो दिस वॉज लाइफ. चलते भी थे हम, और in a good environment we used to move. But when I see those areas, when I see those roads, it's so much congested. लगता ही नहीं है कि वो पुराने वाले road हैं हमारे. So something somewhere went wrong. We are all responsible for it. Not only the government is responsible, even a common person is responsible for it. Now when you see the Western countries, if you travel to Western countries, what is there? I think first, the master plan, choti si jagah ho, the master plan of that place is in place, and then only they will allot the plots, then only they will have buildings, they will have houses, and they will take care. If 5-10 houses are in a line, definitely in between there will be a vacant place, maybe a park, maybe a playing area, maybe a small shopping mall, something like that, so that that type of a monotony is not over there. And of course, at our place over here and in other parts of our country, also if we have our own house, we have big walls to protect us. Bahar to aisa nahi hota hai, If you have a lawn mower, in your place, definitely you will take care of your neighbor also. So next time your neighbor will take care of your lawn. This is how their ethics are there. This is how, their grooming is done, and this is how they are taught at infancy how to own, how to have their own community owning. I think this is what is missing in us, and definitely our youth has to, on war footing, they have to, inculcate in our young children that this place belongs to them, and they should have that community owning, not take filth and, garbage from their house and, throw it outside their house. I think this is what matters. These small things, if we inculcate in our children, definitely Srinagar and our UT will be a very different place to live in, because planning is done. Amir Saab smart city banayenge. If we don't take care of our smart city, pertaining to hygiene, pertaining to control of where to put in the garbage, pertaining to traffic rules, I think it will be again a mess. So just in simpler words, this was my concern, that we should have community owning, and it should be inculcated in our children right from the school level and right from our own families. I think then we can have a different world with these.
Creating sustainable and inclusive cities, it doesn't happen on its own. It doesn't happen by default. It doesn't happen as an afterthought. It happens only by design. And that design comes from very sound planning. And that sound planning needs a huge public support backing, as well as a very strong political backing. That's why I guess this workshop is extremely important, where this urban inclusion and creating sustainable cities, they are very closely related to the politics of a place. They are very closely related to the social sphere of a place. So I was reading this book. In fact, I read this book 2 years back. That was just when I had taken over as the Srinagar Municipal Corporation Commissioner. This book, name of the book is Happy Cities by Charles Montgomery. I think a lot of you must have read it. So he talks about what happy cities actually are. And there is something very striking in the first or the second chapter of the book. He talks about a place called Bogota in Colombia. That place used to be infamous for drug and other crimes. It was terrible. It was almost impossible people to walk on those cities. And then there was this mayor named Enrique Penelosa. So when he took over as the mayor of the Bogota, then he started investing, and I think within a very short span of time, he turned the entire city around. How? By improving public spaces, by designing them well. And there's a very famous quote of his. He says that, cities can be turned around, or I'm not using the exact words, by democratizing sidewalks. In fact, you can see his TED Talks and others. How improving the sidewalks, how improving the public spaces, they can drastically change how a city functions. Now this brings again to a very important question, which I think we all should deliberate. So when we are talking about cities, when we are talking about making smart cities, when we are talking about designing cities, what are we designing these cities for? Are we designing our cities? Are we designing our markets? Are we designing our roads? Are we designing our junctions? Are we designing our what are we designing these for? Are we designing them for cars? Are we designing them for, say, only commerce? Or are we designing them for people who live? A couple of months back, I was attending a course which interestingly had the same title in University of South Denmark. So we went to a place called Vasmos, which is in the outskirts of Copenhagen in Denmark. And they said this is one of our largest ghettos. Now, what was a ghetto in their sense was that this place has slightly higher percentage of immigrants as compared to the other neighborhoods. And the crime rate here is higher by their standards than other neighborhoods. And I said, what are you doing here now? So we are kind of demolishing all these buildings. The buildings are high-rise, nice buildings. Probably we have some of those in the poshest places in outskirts of Delhi or NCR. Now, what were they doing? They're saying all these households, so there's a park in between, there are some public spaces, but nobody comes out. Everyone comes to his home, stays indoors and goes out. So now what are we trying to do? We are trying to make people interact with each other. We are trying to, the houses would be in such a way that the back of one house is towards the front of the other house. Now what are we doing? We are turning the houses around. We are making them face each other. So that when every morning a person comes out of the house, he meets his neighbor, they greet. So the beauty, the happiness of a city, it lies in those social interactions. And inclusive and a sustainable and a good city and advanced city is one which enables those social interactions, which improves those social interactions. And this is precisely how we started and how we tried to plan the projects of Srinagar Smart City that are being implemented right now. Now again, these days you must be seeing, we are hearing all these comments all the time. Somebody had, arguing they're narrowing the roads. Somebody is saying that, interestingly, we're improving the non-motorized NMT infrastructure, cycling and pedestrian infrastructure heavily in the city. And some days back, I was in one of a very important meeting, and one senior colleague said, do you know how many people use a cycle here? I said, of course, we have some numbers, but it is very less. Then why are we making cycling tracks? What is the need of a cycle track? So now, the point is, maybe he thinks it from one point of view, nobody uses a cycle. But when you don't have a place to cycle, who would use a cycle? When you don't have a public bicycle sharing of a systems for cycle, who would use a cycle? So the point is not about, doing the way how, probably our intuition tells us, but going by design, by going by proper scientific planning. So I'll quickly take you through some of the things that we are doing, and maybe I'll try to illustrate this kind of inclusion or sustainability that we're trying to bring in through these projects. Now, when you come out of the Kashmir University, say if you go along the northern foreshore road, now this is one of the most beautiful and pristine part of the Dal Lake. So let's call it this portion from Habbak to say Nishat. Now see, if you go on from this side, what you see is that on this most pristine part of the Dal Lake, the width of the footpath or walking space is not more than 2 feet. So interestingly, you hardly would find anybody walking on that sidewalk because there is no sidewalk. So then this is what we decided, that kind of let's bring in people to this space, let's bring in people to this side. So then if you maybe next time when you're coming from Nishat side, you will see a lot of work is going on from the Nishat side. So we found out some engineering way of doing it without altering the ecosystem, without altering the existing boundary of the Dal Lake. So we have put certain cantilevers, we use certain civil engineering principles to do that. We're creating an 18 feet wide walkway in place of that 2 feet walkway right from Nishat Garden to the Habbak point. This is around 5.5 kilometers. So partly portion of it would be used for cycling, it would be a dedicated cycling track, and rest of it would be for people to walk and to cycle. So now next time when you go, see, this is what we are doing. Now this is on an instant, we are adding up 5.5 kilometers of walking space, 5.5 kilometers of cycling space. We go slightly ahead, or maybe we stop midway a little bit. So there's a beautiful canal which connects Dal Lake with Shalimar Garden. So we call it Shalimar Canal. You must have seen this a while back. It is used by local transport and buses, and they travel it, and the canal was in complete shambles. Again, is it possible for us to connect the Dal Lake to Shalimar? Is it possible? Maybe that is the ambition, that at some point in time a shikara can go through this canal and reach the Shalimar Garden. So you can get on a shikara right at Dal Gate, go to Nishat, and then go to reach also to the interiors of the Shalimar Garden, get down, maybe walk along this canal. But how would you walk when the space is not walkable? So again, we took this project that let's make this space walkable. Of course, maybe at some point, till some point of time, this will have to be converted into an only pedestrian canal, the kind of looking at the pristineness, looking at the beauty of this space. So right now, we are converting this into a nice walkable space. Though cars would also be there, but the walking space is well designated and clearly, nicely, you can go walk through that entire space. Then we go a little ahead, we reach Nishat Garden. Now, what are we doing in the Nishat Garden? Abhi agar aap Nishat Garden jaate hain, what you see there, you see a thela there, you see a reda there, you see a car parked there, you see a scooter or a motorcycle parked just outside the gate. Then you see shops, all the chairs and everything are on the road. And then you see there's a huge car parking which is just ahead of the Nishat Garden, and that car parking is always empty, and the space outside the Nishat Garden is always filled. Now again, if Nishat Garden, say on an average on a day, if it sees say 8,000, 9,000 or 10,000 tourists or people a day, do we have even a little footpath or a pedestrian crossing to cross from the say one side of the road to the other side? No, it is not. So this is, we said, again, this is some space that we need to bring in some kind of sanity to it, some kind of planning to it. So that's how we have planned it. We are carving out a proper dedicated carriage for vehicles through it. Then a proper tabletop so that people can cross. Now when we are talking about tabletop, it means that somebody on a wheelchair, somebody who is specially able, he or she is also able to cross this space quickly and easily. Then again, where do the people get down from the cars? Where do the people get onto the cars? That space is properly well designed. And the design of the space does not allow anybody to put a frivolous car or to do any unauthorized parking on the spot. So that is something which comes only from design. So that is what we are trying to do. We go a little bit ahead. From Nishat to Dal Gate, we have a footpath towards the Dal side. But there was no footpath on the other side. So though there could be this big debate on whether the other footpath is also good or not, but we said kind of let's this is why should there not be a footpath on something so important and something so special? Though most of the properties, most of the hotels, most of the spaces which are used, for example, you have a lot of arts emporiums and other things on the other side of the road. So we said, now what we are going to do, we'll create this footpath, proper accessible footpath right from Nishat to Dalgate. So that is what we are doing. Again, I'll tell you a little interesting thing about our footpaths. Maybe the right side of the footpath, when you go and next time you can have a look at that. Our footpaths usually are maybe 1.5 feet high above the road level. At some places it is 2 feet above the road level, right? At many, and we have something called the IRC standards. Even NIU has quite a detailed framework issued on how to design footpaths, how to make them accessible. A footpath should not be above 6 inches above the surface of the road. Precisely because it is impossible to climb on a footpath which is 1.5 feet high above the road. Now the left side, the footpath that is being made, you can see it. There's a curbstone that is being laid on towards the edge of the road, which demarcates the footpath from the road. It's only 6 inches above the road. Another interesting part, the right side of the footpath, you will see between the footpath and the road there is a nali, there's a drain, surface drain, and that is a problem which we have everywhere. You could have seen the old footpaths on the MA road, irrespective of whether we are talking about the height or about the width of the footpath, whether it is MA road, whether it was the Rajbagh side, whether it is any part of the airport road, anywhere, you will find there is this nali invariably between the footpath and the. Again, this is a barrier. This makes the footpath inaccessible. It makes it unusable. Now what we are doing is we set little design principle. Now the gradient of the road, that we are tilting slightly towards the other side. That means if there is rainwater on the left footpath from here or on the other left side of the road, the water can quickly flow towards the other side. So there is no need for a drain on the other side. There's an L curve that is being used. It has a saucer shape which acts as a surface drain. So there is no drain needed on the other side, and we won't need that drain. So you can easily get on to the left side of the footpath than the right side of the footpath. It should become a city for people. It should not become just a city for cars or city for trucks or city for traffic jams. Our people should be able to move nicely. They should be able to walk through the stretches. They should be able to cycle through the stretches nicely and easily and comfortably. That is what we are doing. We are right now doing construction, or our work is going spread around 100 kilometers in the city. And every 100 kilometers, every inch out of these 100 kilometers have been designed and planned in a way keeping that inclusion and sustainability in mind. You see that footpath. Every footpath that is being made, there's a proper tactile line being put in every footpath so that it guides the spatially able, even though that may be just a very minor percentage of our population. So because we have already exceeded a lot of time, but again I would like to thank you all and would also welcome all of you. My point of coming here was to kind of give this perspective to you, that next time when you are going around the city, when you are seeing this work happening, when you are seeing all these things happen, see it from this perspective. Don't see it like probably a layman who thinks that wider road anywhere is a good thing. No, a well-planned road is a good thing, not simply something which is a wider road. So thank you so much. Thank you.
As we all know, this century is referred to as the urban century, witnessing majority of the world's population living in urban spaces. It is projected by the year 2050, nearly 68 to 70% of the global population will be living in urban areas. And India is also not an exception. India is already on an upward urban trajectory where population is on a continuous rise in urban areas. The UN World Population Prospects 2018 estimated that urban population in India is already around 500 million, accounting for about 35% of the people living in urban spaces in the year 2020. As of now, we do not have the
actual figures from the census 2021 because it is delayed by a few years. But even by conservative estimates, currently there are around 10,000 towns and cities in the country. And it is projected that India's urban population will reach 876 million by the middle of this century and will cross 50% in 2047 when we will be celebrating 100 years of our independence. India's urban population grew at an average of around 3% between 1950 and 2000. The average growth rate of our population has declined since then. We are generally, when we talk about urbanization in the country, we say that India is urbanizing very fast, which is actually not true. Of late, in the last 20 to 30 years, we have found that the growth rate of Indian population has declined. But because of the magnitude of the urban base, even a slight increase in the growth rate is reflected in a huge population increase. The new wave of urbanization is expected to bring both opportunities and challenges. Increasing concentration of population in cities pose challenges to urban and sustainable development, including rising inequalities, social and economic exclusion, and environmental degradation. Urban India acknowledges these emerging challenges and recognizes that there is a need to take advantage of the opportunities of urbanization, with cities being seen as the major drivers of economic growth. As India progresses towards a $5 trillion economy, sustaining the process of urbanization, creating inclusive and sustainable urban spaces in the post-pandemic era will face three key challenges. The first is financing, planning. We cannot say first or second, I think all are important. And the third is the capacities within the cities to manage urbanization. Financing needs are huge, and a large part of investment in the coming decades has to compensate for the cumulative gaps in urban service delivery. The components of the traditional approach of financing urban basic services have been grants provided by the higher levels of government. User charges by the urban local bodies have not been able to recover even the operation and maintenance costs. Municipal finance in India have historically been in a very unsatisfactory state. The cities in India are almost weakest in the world in terms of capacity to raise resources and also financial autonomy. Municipal owned revenues lack buoyancy, leading to an increase in their dependence on transfers from high levels of the government. Property tax, I think Kashmir is going to launch it very soon. A major source of revenue for cities around the world has remained stagnant in the country. The introduction of GST, which has subsumed local taxes, is also creating, or rather weakened the local finances because there has been no compensation for that at the municipal level. Municipal revenue continues to account for a small share of GDP in India and has remained stagnant at around 1% of the GDP in the last 10 years. When we compare with international examples from Poland, it's 4.5%, South Africa 6%, Brazil 7.4%, UK 14%. And again, while a number of cities are challenged by the financial situation, there are a few ELBs which have really taken strides to improve the position of their finances and the operational efficiency through a series of concerted efforts and innovative mechanisms. In the form of tapping their resources by revising taxes, periodically improving collection efficiencies through GIS-based property tax inventories, introducing area-based self-assessment system of property tax, accessing the capital bond markets, and also entering into public-private partnerships. When we look at planning in our Indian cities, we find issues of lack of service land, traffic congestion, pressures on urban infrastructure, extreme air pollution, urban flooding, water scarcity, droughts, which are again not only a reflection of infrastructural shortcomings in cities, but substantial lack of adequate urban planning and governance frameworks. We are aware of these impediments, and almost half of the around 8,000 cities which we had as per the 2011 census are census towns, which are unacknowledged as urban settlements. Again, when we look at the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, the transfer of 12 scheduled functions, including urban planning, from the states to the ULBs did not happen in a manner which was envisaged by the Constitutional Amendment Act. There we find an overlapping of functions between the state and the city agencies, and also a lack of coordination and accountability.
It is a pleasure to be here today morning with you. In fact, when Dr. Ejaz came to me with this idea, because today's seminar is sponsored by ICSSR, my first reaction was that why you have you have intruded into a subject which is a subject of sociology, or which is a subject of geography in our university. But being interdisciplinary, and then with the passage of time, I got that ultimately the planning and execution lies with the bureaucrats or the politicians, and probably he is trying to catch the bull by its horns, and they have started to do it in an interdisciplinary manner. I congratulate him and the Department of Pol Science for conduct of this 2 days seminar. And we had a beautiful picture given by Mr. Athar Amir. I wish that it comes true someday, because I am a cyclist also. In the morning I do cycling a lot, and unfortunately the first accident I have done in life while driving, it was to hit a man who was riding a bicycle. So I wish that the spaces for cycling also comes over in the city. But while listening to his wonderful picture of Srinagar city, my wish from last 3 or more decades when I have come as student in this university, my wish has been that the patch from Dalgate to Hazratbal should improve. And my request to Athar is that, because this area is a pilgrimage area to the Muslims. It is rather an area which is a hub of academic activities. We have an NIT in our neighborhood. This is a university which has the highest footfall. I believe in Srinagar city, the highest footfall is in the Hazratbal area. And I request him that the patch particularly from Dalgate to the Hazratbal, this Ranavari patch, this should also be kept on priority, particularly our students. But we are now in a 5 days week, and our classes are started at 9 in the morning, and we have little space to accommodate girls and boys at our main campus. I would request him, it is my earnest request as the registrar of this university, that this patch from Dalgate to via Ranavari to the Hazratbal area should be, because we see very recently when there was Maraj Alam in Hazratbal, not an inch of any space was free in our campus, which was not occupied by the commuters, whether those were motorcyclists, cars, or etc. So this would be my earnest request to him. Coming to the subject of urbanization, when we call as a student of sociology, we see that it is normally a movement of people from rural areas to the urban areas. And we normally say that there are a lot of reasons for urbanization, and we see that it is that some natural causes are there, probably because of the population growth and the movement of people from the rural areas to the urban areas. And as students of sociology, I will not take much time. We normally define, learn or we discuss sociology in terms of certain issues only. Whether that is the issue of poverty in urban areas, whether that is an issue of crime in urban areas, whether that is an issue of environmental issues or any other issues, we normally divide urban areas into concentric zones and we move from more concentric zones to the less concentric zones where we define the urban areas, or we then go to the suburban areas, we define it urban fringes, etc., etc. But the most important thing which has now been discussed by the urban sociologists and other thinkers also, that it has a positive aspect of economic development in it also. When we talk about the India, as I was somewhere I was reading that 3% of the area is in India, it is occupied, or just 3% of the area is occupied by the urban centers in India only. And when we see this GDP contribution, it is enormous, it is 60%. So that means just occupying a land of 3%, the amount of GDP which is contributing to the world in the Indian economy is enormous. So on those terms we can also see it. And when it comes to somebody has defined the city urban area as a living organism which we need to address and which need to look into also. When we come to the urban planning and we see that at present, whether I may be right or not wrong, probably none of the cities in India figures in the top 50 global ranking. None of the cities figure in India. So probably there is a gap between the planning and the development of cities in India. That is why we don't figure in the global ranking at the world level.
Our country, since past 2 decades, has been undergoing a process of massive and rapid urbanization. The pace of urbanization is expected to continue in the coming years. It is estimated that 43.2% of India's population, that is 675 million people, will reside in urban spaces by 2035. While urbanization has provided economic growth and socio-economic development opportunities, it has also brought adverse health issues, such as rising burden of non-communicable diseases, road traffic injuries, emerging and re-emerging infectious diseases, and substance abuse. These urban health problems are influenced by various factors like socio-cultural, economic, and demographic characteristics. For example, gender, race, ethnicity, caste, education, wealth, behavior, and lifestyle. One of the most complex challenges our country, India, faces today is the pace and pattern of urbanization. When it comes to the phenomena of urbanization in Kashmir, our UT administration is doing a commendable work by taking effective steps for inclusive and sustainable growth in the cities. During the foundation stone for various smart city projects in Srinagar, our Lieutenant Governor observed that Srinagar Smart City project has been structured with a clear focus on improved urban governance and making this historical city more visible and vibrant. We are taking effective steps to accelerate the mission for inclusive and sustainable growth in the cities, the Lieutenant Governor also added. It is in this context, this seminar on this pressing issue of urbanization and urban planning has much relevance and is very timely. What is more special about this seminar is the people and sub-themes. We have guests from policy as well as academic domain. And we expect brainstorming deliberation on the issues of urbanization and urban planning. with a special emphasis on how to create inclusive and sustainable urban spaces. We not only will be deliberating on methodological issues pertaining to research on urbanization and urban planning, but will also be covering issues of sustainable urban mobility, challenges of urbanization in India and Kashmir, environmental concerns, and various other issues of policy making vis-a-vis the said theme. Apart from this, I would like to submit before the Honorable Vice Chancellor that Department of Political Science is regularly, we have a rich legacy of conducting seminars. We were doing it previously on weekly basis. Every Saturday we used to have a seminar. Of late, in last year, we have conducted 2 big seminars. One was on research methodology, which was a 5-day workshop, wherein we got tremendous response from social science, School of Social Science, and people were registered for an eminent resource persons have been invited from outside and within the university. And we have also done one national workshop last year in November that was development of glossary of political science in Kashmiri language in collaboration with Ministry of Education, Government of India, which was first of its kind conducted by the Department of Political Science. More so, that's my personally I feel pleasure, and on behalf of department I would be very thankful to the Honorable Vice Chancellor that we have been given go ahead with a full-fledged course, that is MA Public Administration under the auspices of Political Science, which was very recently in the University Academic Council passed and was ratified in University Syndicate as well.
Community as well as the members of civil society all have valid reasons to congregate here. It's expected that an effort will be made to generate inputs for a policy framework for urbanism and urban planning with a firm theoretical basis, a framework in which theory guides practice and practice validates theory. I believe very soon we are going to have an issue, particularly in the cities like Srinagar, where economic issues and land issues are going to have tremendous significance. Therefore, the focus on traditional industries, cottage industry, handicrafts and other things, as well as shifting towards what you call as flat systems, with obviously having concern for the fact that we are living in a seismic zone, these are going to be the pressing issues in the coming time. How we deal with these issues and host of other issues is going to define the future of urban centers like Srinagar. So, besides learning about individual cases, this seminar also provides an opportunity to converse within the overall framework of Himalayan region and integrate the academic learning from across the regions. There is an old saying, all politics is local, and yet analyzing politics at local level yields insights for politics at the higher levels. I will slightly modify this and say all planning and governance is local, yet it leads insights for higher levels. Debating, discussing, and examining the pros and cons of urbanization process and planning with urban centers like Srinagar as case study can go a long way to work out a better policy framework for our country as such. While the government from time to time has been and is coming with new policies and programs like Housing for Urban Poor, Swachh Bharat Urban, Smart City Mission, etc. However, the dynamic nature of the phenomenon demands that all stakeholders engage in a consistent and a coordinated effort to keep up with the challenges. The goal has to be to make urban centers livable, breathable, walkable, and sustainable. I'm sure this seminar is going to be a step towards this direction, besides opening up new areas of knowledge and research for our students. With these words, I once again thank you all for being with us. Thank you very much.